Great to be here with you.
Hello, great to be here with you as well, Chris.
Look forward to everyone getting to know you a little bit better. Tell us a little
Yes.
about your background and where you grew up.
Well, I'm born and raised in Brazil. So I grew up in Brazil, São Paulo, to be more specific. And I stayed there until I finished my bachelor's degree, which I did in business administration. And then I had the opportunity to come to the U.S. to do my master's degree. So that's where I grew up.
So about what age did you move to the U.S.?
So right after bachelor's, I finished my bachelor's, which was around 2021, 20 to 21.
So
Yeah.
what kind of hobbies did you have growing up?
So growing up, I had all sorts of hobbies. I was a very active kid. Like playing sports. In Brazil, is very at that time it was very normal to be playing sports in the streets. Like just playing with friends. Very different world than we have today because electronics was not a big part of our day to day activity. So I would literally come back from school and be out playing with my friends, soccer, you name it. But I also had hobbies that were related to electronics at a very early age. I don't know if you remember this, like the PCs that you used to build, right? Because back then you wouldn't buy a computer off the shelf of the store. You actually had to buy the parts and put them together. So I was part of that was part of my hobby was to put together computers with my father. So we would buy spare parts and then put together computers, buy the processor, buy the memory, and all that stuff. So that was also part of my hobby.
Awesome. So tell us about coming to the U.S. and did you come alone? And tell us about your family.
Yeah, interesting story because I have always had the desire to do a master's degree outside of Brazil, right? I think that was a little bit of what my father wanted to do, but he didn't have the opportunity to do it, so I carried that over. But it was also a desire that I had to do a master's degree outside of Brazil, learn a new culture, learn the language, and all that stuff. And so when I was finishing my bachelor's degree, I was dating Michelle, who's my wife today, and we started dating very, very early. She had the opportunity to come to the U.S. to finish her bachelor's, and I'm like, well, I want to do a master's outside of Brazil. The U.S. seems like the place that I want to be, and I want to do my master's there because learning the language, the culture, and Michelle was coming here, so I thought, why not, do both things together? I will have the opportunity to be close to her because she moved here with her family and with her parents, and then I'll do my master's in the U.S. So that's how I made the decision. Both because I wanted to do a master's outside Brazil, and I wanted to be with my back then girlfriend.
Oh, that's awesome. So and then when did you guys get married and tell us about your kids too, if you would.
Yeah, so we know each other for 24 years, almost 25
Oh,
years. We met, she was 16, I was 17. We started dating a year later, so I was 18, she was 17. And we've been together ever since. So that's a long story. Like I've been together with her more than half of my entire life,
right.
it's not very very common that you see stories like this, obviously. And then when we came to the US, she, like I said, she came with her family, and then I finished my master's degree. I had the opportunity to stay here doing my OPT, which is a program that you do right after you finish masters. And things started happening here, and we decided to, that this was a place that we wanted to stay together, grow our family, our future family. We finally got married 2009, and we've been married for 15 years. And was it 2009? Yeah, I think. And then and we've been together, and I've always wanted a family, and so we are very fortunate that God blessed us with three kids. We have Enzo, who's 11, we have Sophia, who's 7, and then Bella, she's 6. So three kids, we're definitely a handful, but we love being parents. And Michelle is such an amazing mom. She definitely, whatever life purposes, given by God was definitely to be a mom and develop motherhood in her life. So um, that's a little bit of our family.
Yeah, you're blessed. You're blessed.
Amen.
Switching gears a little bit, going into like business influences, mentors.
Mhm.
Oh, you've mentioned your dad to me. You've mentioned your uncle. Maybe you can speak on
Mhm.
anybody else you want to mention.
Well, I had some, throughout my life, I had some opportunities to get in touch with entrepreneurs. All different types of entrepreneurs. From my father, all the way to my grandpa, who actually started the company that my father worked, which was an auto parts company in Brazil. So he had that, entrepreneur type. My father started working with him, but then I had another very, important and big figure in my life, who was my uncle. My dad's cousin. He was a very savvy entrepreneur, a big risk taker, but at the same time, he was very sharp, very smart. And he saw that I had the profile of being an entrepreneur, of, like the business world. So he was self-made. He made his fortune since he was very young. And he became a billionaire. And he talked a lot because I remember when I was already living here in the U.S. and I used to go to Brazil to visit, and he used to call me in his office, and I would just sit in a room with him. The opportunity of just watching his meetings. I was just watching how he did business. The people that would go there. And he was a very sharp guy, and so I learned a lot from him just by sitting there, and all these different figures coming to his office, like very, very important people. He had like the president of Brazil in his office, and and it was interesting because he would introduce me, to all the people very politely, and I would sit there quietly, but also, having the opportunity to engage. So I learned a lot from him. I learned of what, the things that you should be doing in the business world, and things that you shouldn't be doing as well. So I learned both sides, and those.
What was something that stands out that you would say like you really recognized was a gift that he had?
He was a visionary. So, and I do see a lot of that trait in you, Chris, that he had, because he had a vision and nothing could stop him from that. He would find anyone that would help him execute that vision. He would find resources, he would find ideas. He would not take no for an answer. Like if people came to him, to nag him, like, like this is not a good idea, or this, he would always ask, like, okay, give me at least 3 good reasons that you think this is not a good idea, 3 valid reasons, okay? He would ask himself, he would ask, like, what this person knows that I don't know that he's doubting my idea, and what do I know that this person does not know that validates my idea? So he would always ask himself questions like this, and always share with me and teach me, how to ask questions. And always trying to push the boundary of, like, hey, he was a risk taker, like I said, right? But it was mostly calculated risk than just being, crazy. And how to be a, risk taker, like, teaching me how to actually calculate risk. And that goes a little bit into my current profile, I would say, which is like, data driven, like, always searching for data to see the patterns, to see, the things that are pointing to which direction. So I would say that that kind of answers your question.
Right. Well, that's awesome. I appreciate the kind words and obviously a lot of
Absolutely.
wisdom and guidance that you had there. Uh,
Yes.
when did you first get interested in technology and innovation?
Well, very young age, like I said, we started building computers with my dad, literally like building PCs from the zero, and then I had the opportunity to do some coding classes, and I was probably like maybe 13. So coding back then was totally different. It was pure HTML, and coding language basically teaches you how any type of program works, anything regarding electronics, because everything is code based, right? It's a language of technology. So that taught me and obviously gave me the interest of because I started learning the language of technology. The same way that if I want to communicate with someone in any other language, English, Spanish, French, you need to learn their language in order to be able to communicate and also connect with that person. I connected with technology like that because I started learning the language of technology and learning what it can do for you in our world. And I think I kind of knew that technology would take over the world because it was growing so fast. And back then, fast, and I say quote unquote fast, is very different than today. The computer that I would build, it would last me at least like 2, 3, 4 years easily. Nowadays, if you buy a computer today, next year it's obsolete already. The same thing with our phones. That's why one of the reasons they keep launching new phones every year. Besides the fact that obviously it's a money making activity they do, is because the technology is evolving very fast. So I think that to me that what gave me a lot of interest in technology, and I would say it's a passion.
Right.
It's
Absolutely.
how it evolves and how fast it grows.
Right. That was going to be my next question is how fast is AI just transforming now?
And not only AI, because AI is just the door for transformation, because everything that happened until now was it wouldn't be able to happen, in the last 10 years if it wasn't for the advances in technology. But AI and the code language that is developed through AI is going to catapult us 25 years ahead. Like we always mention that during the pandemic, we accelerated the growth of technology in a lot of different things, a lot of different areas, because out of necessity. With AI is going to give us a lot more opportunities to advance faster, and it's interesting because AI is evolving on a daily basis, not even on a monthly basis anymore. Every day there's a new thing because it just opened a door for a faster development of technology. I study a lot about AI. It's something that I probably study every single day. And more than anything, people are, Chris, some people are afraid of artificial intelligence, right? But we need to stay ahead of the curve. We need to understand the potential and what it can do in order for you to be able to control it. And I'll
Right.
let be controlled by it because if you learned about it, then you can control the technology.
Right. No, it makes perfect sense. How do you keep up with and stay ahead of the curve in such a fast moving industry?
Yeah, that's a great question because, like I mentioned, it evolves on a daily basis, right? So it's actually looking for the right places to get information because we get so much misinformation nowadays that one of I think the most important um, things that we can do is filter information, and getting, and you know that a lot because you are very careful with your sources of information every time that you read something or every time that an information is thrown at you, you just don't accept it because the world is the world around misinformation, right? So what I knowing, like I said, the code language of computers and AI, what I do is I validate every time I see something new. I try to validate. I use different sources. Like when it comes to AI, for example, a lot of people talk about ChatGPT, right? Because that's just one of the many, right? But ChatGPT is, in a sense, an infancy of AI, right? It
Hmm.
started with ChatGPT. Obviously, they're evolving because OpenAI is a huge company now, but it opened the door for other companies to find the gaps that OpenAI was not exploring. So that's why I am not loyal to just one tool. I use many tools, to do my researches, to get information. So all the way from Copilot, Microsoft, Perplexity. We have Manus. We have so many different tools, and I use them in parallel to see what the best result that I can get from each one. So it's a lot of investigative work, when it comes to being ahead of the curve in the technology.
Awesome. What role, you mentioned data earlier, what role does data play in shaping innovation?
Well, it plays a major role. Everything is surrounds around data because even if you think about the social media platforms, social media platforms are analyzing data on a second to second basis to shape their own algorithm. Every Nobody says you got to understand the algorithm from social media if you want to really project your company or your product. The thing is, the algorithm nowadays they have, it's almost like a live organism that keeps switching and changing based on what, on the data that it provides, it receives, right? And you are a point of data, Chris. I'm a point of data. Every user is a point of data. So, and that's why AI is so important right now for data-driven companies because we cannot process the amount of data that is produced on a daily basis by all these touch points. But AI can calculate this, can get this raw data and calculate and make it meaningful us, right? Imagine you, Chris, if I gave you a spreadsheet with 500,000 lines, and if I told you, like, Chris, just organize this data based on this, and this factor, and produce a report. It will take you probably weeks or months to do that, right? AI can do that in a matter of minutes, seconds sometimes. So having the data is not enough, is what you do with the data. Being data driven, it means that you grab the data and then you know what to do with that data. So I think that's one of the fields of business that people usually tend to neglect. They have the data, and that's just the first step. What do you do with it? What's the next step when you do? What do you do with that data? What are the actions that you take, knowing what you know now?
Right, very powerful. I know you developed a love for time management. Tell us a little bit about how that came about.
Yeah, that it's interesting because it came out of necessity. Literally necessity. Because having three kids, being an entrepreneur, having hobbies such as technology and this, like, I found myself in a place that I wanted to do a lot more with my time, and I had the same excuse as 95 or 99% of people saying, "Oh, I don't have the time. I don't have the time to do this. I don't have the time to do that." I wanted to, for example, read more books, or I wanted to do more courses, because one of my passions is personal development. So I wanted to do more courses, but obviously excuse was always the same, I lack time. So then I started to read about time management, and I'm like, wait a minute. I found out that time management is not a gift. It's not something that you are either born with or you're not. You're lucky if you have it, or you unlucky if you don't. No, it's a skill set, and any skill set can be developed. So I put that in my head. I'm like, okay, there are a lot of busy people in the world that are doing amazing things, that are not using lack of time as an excuse. They have the same amount of time. You have, 1,440 minutes every single day that is God given. It's what they do with that time. Okay, so I basically implanted that in my head that time management is a skill set that I need to develop if I want to balance all the areas of my life, personal, professional, have time with my kids without feeling guilty, have time to do deep work. So that's essentially time management, which in a sense is energy management. Time is energy. So learning that literally changed my perception of the world. I think that to me that was one of the most crucial moments of my life, to understand how powerful and understanding about time management.
Right, right. No, that's awesome. Makes sense. Makes great sense there. So what's I know you could probably go for hours and even days on this, but what's three like time management tips you would share for someone that you just got started coaching?
Well, it's very basic because of all more than 1,000 people that I've trained so far, I've compiled the the most common questions, pain points of all these people because it's common for all of us, right? And if you ask me, okay, what are the three things that I need to do if I'm like totally lost? Okay, the first thing is, and it's extremely important, I can't emphasize this enough, is know where your time is going. People, like I said, have the same amount of time every single day. The problem is, time is a currency as well, okay? They don't know where they're spending this currency. If you don't know where you're spending your money, currency, time, you're going to spend it in unwise ways. You don't know where the money or your time is going to go. It's the same thing when you budget or your money or your checkbook. Same thing with time. So know where your time is going to tell you what your priorities are. A lot of people, when they come to me and say, completely lost, man, first thing I ask them is, okay, do this exercise, which is time, and because you applied this, which is crucial, where your time is going. And then I will tell you the priorities, how inverted your priorities are, and that's why you're not achieving your objectives. That will be number one. Know where you're going. Number two would be understand that 90% of the time you're going to be doing two types of tasks. You're going to be doing either prevention of pain or production of gain. What is prevention of pain? It's maintenance tasks, right? Reading emails, doing chores, helping out a friend, just maintenance, okay? These kind of tasks are not going to move you to the next step. But if you don't do them, like for example, putting gas in your car or charging your car, if you have an electric car, that's just maintenance. If you don't do them, it's going to produce pain, right? So that's why I call it prevention of pain. The other type of task is producing gain. Production of gain tasks, anything that is going to produce real growth, okay? If you're dedicating time for deep work, dedicating time for data analysis, dedicating time to build a presentation, sales presentation for your team, so all of that is producing real growth. So understanding these two types of tasks and knowing how to balance them, that's step number two. And then number three, now that you know what you need to do in order to grow, step number three is a very natural step people neglect, which is protecting your growth. Now that you know what you need to do to grow, you have to intentionally protect that time for growth, because the tendency that we have is that 90% of our time is going to be spent doing prevention of pain or maintenance. And where is the growth? The growth is not going to show in your life because you're not spending or protecting the time for growth. Number three would be protect the time for growth. Once you wrote down the activities that you know that you need to do in order to grow. And I'm talking all the areas of our lives. Okay. I'm talking personal, I'm talking spiritually, I'm talking health wise, everything that you need to do to grow, you have to grow that. And that's what people fail to do. And that's why people don't grow. I hope that
Awesome.
made sense.
No, it made a lot of sense. It's great. You mentioned health. How long have you had a passion for health and fitness?
For forever, because my mom, she actually owned a gym when I was very young. I was a kid, so I started doing karate classes, and then right after jiu-jitsu classes, which are martial arts, in the gym that she owned. And I used to go there very early in the morning and just be around, like be around the coaches, be around the this environment. So I've developed a passion for being that environment and for physical activities of all sorts since very early,
Yeah.
in age.
I know you love tennis, but what like gym activity growing up was like? What was like your favorite?
My favorite sport.
Like actual gym activity, like in the
Oh,
gym.
gym activity. I think was like HIIT exercises, high intensity exercises,
Awesome.
because it's just all around, like you work your lower part of the body, you work out the upper part of the body. I think any exercise that is body weight, which you just use your own weight, so you don't need like, a rack of weights. You don't need like all these machines, like our body is a perfect machine, like God made us perfect, and just using our own body weight we can do a lot, right? And I think people use that as an excuse, like not to exercise. Oh, I don't have a gym access to a gym, I don't have the proper set of equipment, like I've learned from a very young age that all you got to do is just do push-ups, do crunches, do like you can do everything with your own body. So I think my favorite type of exercise would be related to high intensity workouts that use your own body.
Yeah, love it, love it. You obviously have a deep understanding for supplements, formulated many in the past. And you mentioned, you love Fit Team supplements. I'd ask you to tell me more about why.
Well, because I develop a passion for supplements and understanding the each ingredient of each supplement. I've helped to develop over 50 products so far, and what actually gave me a big insight on this whole industry of supplements was when I had the opportunity to sit down with formulators and understand about raw ingredients, about sourcing of ingredients, and about what's the percentage of each ingredient that would actually create a product that is effective. At the same time, I learned how to create products that are not effective, but they look like being effective, which in the industry is called fairy dust. When you see
Mhm.
products that have just a sprinkle of this, a sprinkle of that, and then marketing wise, they can claim they have this or they have that.
Right.
But in fact, when you get the percentage of that ingredient in the formula, it's not as significant. You won't experience the effects that you are expecting because there's just not enough active ingredients for product. So understanding all of that through formulation, through talking to real chemists and real formulators, I started being very careful with the things that I put in my body because there's this whole movement called read your label, right? That was created by I forgot the name of it. Um, it's a it's a company out of Washington. But basically, the movement is know what you put in your body, right? Read your label, like really turn the product around and see what you put in. And I remember when I first met you, Chris, that I think one of the first things that I shared with you is that I was going to be I was going to go deep into the formulations of FITTEAM before I even started taking the product. This care that I have for what I put in, and I was really impressed because number one, of the simplicity of the ingredients. Believe it or not, when you get products that shows in their label, shows in their marketing material over 50 ingredients, over 75 ingredients, that actually turns me off. Not, to me, that's,
Exactly.
it's the opposite, right? Because going back to the percentage of the ingredients, right? If you have 75 ingredients in a formulation, imagine how much of each ingredient you're getting. It's just a tiny speck of each one in order to be able to put in a single scoop, or on a, or in a single pill, even worse. So that turns me off. So what I liked about the product was the simplicity of it and the quality of ingredients. Like organic ingredients, the sources of ingredients, and all obviously the percentage of each ingredient, which is the active ingredients, the real active ingredients. So to me, less is more when it comes to nutrition. That's why when you developed fitting greens, my advice to you was always, Chris, less is more. Just get the best of the best. No cutting corners. Don't compromise quality, because that's one of the problems that a lot of companies they have, is that when they compromise quality because they products using fillers and all these things that are not gonna necessarily harm you, but they're not gonna do any good for you as well. So most companies, unfortunately, so my first advice to you is that, Chris, to build a brand with integrity, you have to start building formula, and that was my advice.
Right. 100%.
That's why
100%.
that's why I'm impressed with the formulations you guys developed.
Thank you. You mentioned movement. There's definitely a movement from sick care, I would say, to preventative health. Anything you want to share on that?
I mean, that alone would carry me for another hour, to be quite honest, Chris. So I'm gonna really like condense it, like the way that our healthcare, and when I say our healthcare, I'm not only talking about US, I'm talking about throughout the world. Yeah, it's not meant to get you healthier. It's actually meant to get you sicker, because the sicker you are, the more money you produce for the industry, right? They don't want to see you healthy, because when you're healthy, you don't use medication, you don't use, so it's just logic, right? So starting to build your body in a way that you don't depend on medicine, that's definitely the way to go. Like prevention, is going to cost you less than treatment. Okay, so when I talk to people about nutrition, your body, you have an internal engine. It's very easy to maintain. You don't need all these complex things that are created by the farming industry. You need actually raw ingredients, raw food, deep greens, dark greens that are available in nature. That's why I'm very passionate about the greens, Chris, because you actually have ingredients there that you don't consume on a daily basis, even if you have a very healthy, not like on a salad you're gonna have a spoonful of spirulina, or blue green algae, these deep dark greens that are very important. You don't have that usually, so that's why it's supplements like the greens is, to me, is a must to build your balanced body. If you have a balanced body, a balanced nutrition, that you're going to create an environment, Chris, that diseases, they won't thrive, because you don't create an environment for diseases. You have to understand that every disease needs an environment to thrive. Okay, usually it's an acidic environment. And what is acidic environment? Everything that we consume that is bad, sugar, coffee, alcohol, that's acidic. It brings our pH level to an acidic state. That's the perfect environment for diseases to thrive. So the opposite, when you don't create that environment, guess what happens? It won't thrive. So you're not creating good soil or a good environment for diseases to thrive. And that's our job, is to create environments within ourselves that are not great environments for diseases to thrive. I hope that kind of encapsulated what my sentiments about nutrition.
No, for sure, for sure. Well, we had a great conversation about family tech, innovation, fitness, health, and could go on and on. But really appreciate your time this morning, Rod.
Absolutely, absolutely. My pleasure, Chris. It was great to be here with you and spend this time with you. Always a pleasure.
I appreciate your friendship and leadership, and
Absolutely.
um, look forward to we'll catch up soon.
I appreciate you as well, Chris. Congratulations on everything that you're doing, not only with FITTEAM, but in leadership and always striving to be your best and to show your best to people and bring out the best in people. I commend you for that.
Thank you.
Have an amazing and blessed day.
You too.